Sometimes movies come out and get mixed or even negative reviews.
This film, I think, is a waste of time. Pretty to look at, but a waste of time.
And then after some time passes, they become better appreciated for whatever reason. Here's why, no matter how you feel about 2005's Constantine, you should probably go watch it. Welcome to Think Thing, a YouTube channel featuring video essays, usually. Today, we're doing something a little different. As I record this, it's late September, and that means that spooky season is upon us, and I realized that I have a few different ideas for videos that I wanted to make for this channel. And normally the process of me making videos involves writing a script, which involves research and then time to write it and then rewrite it, and then I record the voiceover part of the video.
Yes, I can hear you, Clem Fandango.
And then I edit the visuals to it. That process takes a long time, and I have enough of these for this time of year that I wanted to try a different way. If you've seen my videos before and the way that I sounds a little different, the difference is this. I'm not reading from a prepared script. I am speaking extemporaneously. I am following notes, and I'll record it off the cuff. I'll make some edits, apply some visuals, and see how quickly I can turn this thing around so that I can get on to the next subject that I want to discuss. Today, I want to talk about the 2005 film Constantine, starring Keanu Reeves. This is a divisive movie. There are people who really, really hate that this movie even exists. And then there are people like me who love this movie. And then I guess there's a bunch of people in between too. No matter where you are on that spectrum of reactors to Constantine, maybe you've never seen it. I do recommend going to check it out or check it out again. And I'm going to give you some reasons why in this video. So when the movie was released, it was released to, let's say, mixed reviews. I think the Rotten Tomatoes score, if you look at top critics on Rotten Tomatoes, it's something like 27%, which is very bad. If you look at all critics, it's a little bit better, and the audience score is actually quite a bit better, which is sometimes the case with movies like this. The reverse of that can also be true if there's a particular toxicity in the fan base for a movie that's otherwise fairly well appreciated by critics. But this is one of those movies where the critics really didn't like it, but fans, a lot of fans did, or at least a lot of fans of this movie did. Because, of course, Constantine comes from existing IP, that IP being Hellblazer, a comic book series put out by DC Comics, and then Vertigo, which was an imprint that DC had for a while. The character of John Constantine, or actually more properly, it's pronounced John Constantine in the comics canonically. This is a character that was created by Alan Moore. That's someone you may have heard of before. And he is this sort of ghost hunting, sarcastic, nihilist type of guy who is from Liverpool, England, and gets involved in occult and wild stuff in the sort of DC universe, the sort of occult, the Sandman arm of the DC universe. In the 90s, I was the manager of a comic book store, and the conversations that we had were sort of imagining how we would cast movie versions of the characters in the comics. So we would constantly sort of stunt cast our imagined Watchmen movie or imagined X-Men or whatever. And we talked about John Constantine as well. Alan Moore has said that he was based on Sting visually in his head. He was thinking somebody like Sting. The character has been drawn a number of different ways over the years, but usually with blonde hair and a sort of a long tan trench coat and usually smoking a cigarette. When the news came out that they had cast Keanu Reeves as John Constantine, I think they reacted negatively to that. Now, this is at a time when Keanu was certainly a famous movie star, but I feel like in the last decade or so, in the John Wick era of Keanu Reeves, he has taken on a status, partly because I think people have come to realize that he's just this really nice guy. He's well liked just personally by people. And he's been in the business long enough and done enough good stuff that he's enjoying a really positive reputation. He's had a bit of a renaissance, I think, in the last decade or two. The movie Constantine is almost 20 years old now, and back in 2005, Keanu was certainly a famous movie star, but I don't think he had quite attained the level of adoration that he enjoys today. And I think people saw this casting as bad, certainly, and like a craven money grab, perhaps even worse. I know that my eyes rolled pretty hard when I heard that Keanu was cast in the role. And then I went and I saw the movie, and I didn't hate it. I was surprised to learn. And in fact, upon rewatching, I found that I actually kind of like this movie. And upon rewatching some more, I actually think I love this movie. And in fact, recently, for a separate thing, within the last 24 hours, in fact, put together a list of my top 100 movies, like my favorite 100 movies. And that's a work in progress, and I'm going to talk about it in a future video. But Constantine is on that list. That's how good this is. Like, I've seen a lot of movies, and for a movie to make my top 100, I have to really love that movie. And so, yeah, I love this movie. Let's talk about why a little bit. I already mentioned this, but this film kind of has an original sin, which was the casting of Keanu Reeves as John Constantine. But once the filmmakers were stuck with that decision, and I don't know, I have no inside information about how much the director of the film wanted Keanu versus how much the people who were producing this and putting it together kind of got stuck with Keanu because the studio wouldn't give them money otherwise, or I don't know. I can speculate, but I don't know the answer to those questions. But if it's true that Keanu was on board early, I feel like the decisions that were made after that were all the right decision. For example, they decided to set the movie in LA and have John Constantine be an American rather than being a Liverpudlian. In general, we've learned you don't want Keanu Reeves doing an English accent.
Bloody wolves chasing me through some blue inferno.
And in fact, I feel like Keanu Reeves is best when the character he's playing is pretty close to Keanu Reeves. I really like him as an actor. I think he has a lot of charisma, but I don't think he has a ton of range. And so when he's in a movie, it really is going to work best if the character he's playing is somewhere pretty close to the character that Keanu Reeves just is naturally. And so that was a decision that they made. And I think given that casting choice, it's absolutely the right decision. Do not try to make Keanu Reeves an Englishman. Do not give him blonde hair. Don't try to make him in any way, shape, or form like Sting. Let Keanu be Keanu, and then see what kind of a story you can tell from there. Also, they changed part of his origin. As part of the story of this movie, they made a suicide attempt from when he was a young man, the reason why he is damned, why he knows that he's damned to hell in this movie, which is important. That's a change from the comics, but given the script of the film, I think it was a really clever change. Also, the casting of the supporting characters in this film is nearly perfect. Tilda Swinton as the Archangel Gabriel is absolute genius. She's amazing in this, and it's just so good.
You're fucked.
Peter Stormare as Satan is maybe the greatest representation of Satan on screen. I just watched actually a video by a YouTube essayist named Pancake talking about representations of the devil on screen, and he very correctly calls this out as being one of the absolute best of all time. Completely agree. Jimon Hanzu as Papa Midnight is great. Pruitt Taylor Vince in anything is great. That is a character actor who had a little bit of a moment in the 90s, and I wish that he was still working as much as he was then, because he's awesome in everything. Even Shia LaBeouf, who is not an actor I tend to like much, is not annoying in this movie. Like, he's pretty good, actually, in this movie, even though he plays almost exactly the same character that he played in iRobot. Virtually the same person. He's fine in this. It's a change too. Chaz in the comics is not a young kid. It's not, but it's still, it works in this movie. It's still good. I think the visual idea for what hell is that's represented in this movie is fantastic. A real stroke of genius stuff to make hell basically be the way the world is, except really awful, hellish, right? Like take the literal world outside, but make it really, really hellish. It just looks good, considering also that this is 2005 and CGI was still a fairly young art form. This film doesn't look all that dated. It looks a little dated, but it doesn't look that bad. It holds up. They really did, I think, stay true to the tone of Hellblazer and of Vertigo Comics more broadly. And specifically, this script draws a lot from the Garth Ennis and Will Simpson story in Hellblazer called Dangerous Habits, which is maybe my favorite arc in the book. Certainly the cancer storyline is taken directly from that part of the Hellblazer comic. And they did a really good job with it. They did change some things. They sort of changed the resolution of it a little bit, but again, kept to the tone of it and did something that was really internally self-consistent in the film. The story is really tight. These sisters, Rachel Weisz plays one of a pair of twin sisters who have an ability that is apparently similar to Constantine. So Constantine in the comics couldn't see these half-breeds like he can in the movie, but it's a good conceit that he's got this. He was born with this sort of special ability that where he can see these half-breeds of sort of part human, part angel, part demon that are influencing things on Earth, and that was the thing that made him suicidal as a young man, that led to his suicide attempt, that led to him being damned. So it's all sort of wrapped up in the story of this thing, and that the Rachel Weisz sisters have something similar, and they each reacted to it in a different way. One of them sort of went insane, and the other sort of suppressed it or repressed it so that she didn't really have that ability anymore when she got older. And there's a kind of a cosmic horror element to that take on this that I really appreciate and think is neat and could be delved into even more, I think. So yeah, the script, even though it made some changes from the comics, I think they were smart changes, and that they don't really break the idea of Constantine or Hellblazer once you accept that he's an American living in LA played by Keanu Reeves, I guess. They didn't call this movie Hellblazer because they wanted to avoid confusion with Clive Barker's Hellraiser. And in fact, that's true of the comic as well. The comic was called Hellblazer because they wanted to call it Hellraiser, but it was that at that time very close to the release. When that comic was first coming out, it was still very close to the release of Clive Barker's first Hellraiser movie. And so they changed the name of the comic book from Hellraiser to Hellblazer. And then when they were making this movie, they decided that even Hellblazer was too close to Hellraiser. And so they just called it Constantine. I think Constantine is a perfectly fine name for this film. However, I have been thinking, after watching the Sandman show on Netflix, the first season of Sandman, in which there's a character named Joanna Constantine that is basically the same character, but a woman. It occurred to me that she was so good that it would be cool if Netflix made a show, called it Hellblazer, but had Joanna Constantine from the Sandman show be the sort of protagonist of a Hellblazer show on Netflix. I think that would be really cool. Netflix, call me. I'm available for these kinds of consultations. So give me a shout.
Run along and fuck off back to hell.
I certainly think enough time now has passed that no one is going to confuse a show called Hellblazer with Clive Barker's Hellraiser. So Constantine did actually surprisingly well at the box office. I expected to look this up and learn that it had tanked, but it didn't knock it out of the park, but it's certainly not a tank. It actually wound up making $231 million worldwide against a budget of about $100 million, which is okay. That's a profit. It's not a huge profit for this kind of movie, but it made money. As I was looking this up, I was like, oh yeah, I remember Keanu Reeves on Colbert had said that Colbert asked him, was there a character he'd like to play again? That he hasn't been able to. And Keanu's answer was Constantine. And I got really excited by that. And Colbert was like, someone's going to ask you to do it. I didn't know until I was doing research for this video that, in fact, that's happening. Apparently, the original director and Keanu are on board. There is a script being written, and it looks like this might actually happen. It's a spooky season miracle. Okay, thanks for watching. Again, this was a sort of an experiment to see if I could extemporaneously knock out one of these things and if it would actually allow me to make a video quicker than I normally do. Even if this is a smash success, don't expect it to be the norm from now on. I still very much am more comfortable writing a script ahead of time, and so I'm going to keep doing those kinds of videos, I think, primarily. But for these ones that I want to bust out fast, this might be the approach I take. We'll see. Anyway, thanks everybody for watching, and we'll see you next time.